Today's cocktail is the Pink Orchid. The Pink Orchid is a rum-based frozen cocktail served in a cocktail glass. 2 ounces pineapple juice, 1 1/4 ounce Captain Morgan spiced rum, 1/4 ounce coconut cream, 2 ounces cranberry juice. Blend with crushed ice, garnish with fresh mint. As we always say, drink responsibly, and if you're so inclined, I highly urge you to try the Pink Orchid. Welcome back to Cocktails and Crankshafts. I'm your boy, the fat man, the Africanized honeybee, the killer bee, carguyblog05 at gmail.com, 05car at Twitter, the word zero, Z-E-R-O, the number 5, the word car, C-A-R at Twitter. Back with me as always, most of the time, sometimes when she's inclined to do so. Sorry, that's the vodka and cranberry talking.
I like it. I'll allow it.
My fabulous co-host, May Flowers. What's up, May?
What's the deal, son? And I think you have motivated me, right? Because I've been thinking everybody's talking about branding and being all one brand. And when Sway talks to rappers on his show, he's like, you gotta make sure your Instagram matches your Twitter, which matches your Snapchat, which matches your TikTok, which matches your website. You know, you gotta stay consistent. So I was thinking I might use May Flowers, you know, on my Twitter and my Instagram. I might change and become one new, you know, umbrella term.
I am rolling up on 47 years of age. I don't have time to maintain. I'm unemployed and I still don't have time to maintain 17 different social medias. God bless Sway, but Sway has a social media manager. I don't.
I mean, facts. I mean, I have a half-ass Twitter and an even less than a half-ass Instagram, but they should probably match.
I told my boy's year-old daughter has more followers on YouTube than I do.
I mean, but she's so that's accurate.
She's got multiples. No, let me say that.
And she probably has YouTube, Twitter, and no, she don't have Twitter.
Almost 100 times more followers than I have right now.
She probably got a poppin' Instagram too.
She's at 800 and something, and I last checked, I was at like 13. So
right.
I was like, man, I tried, but I just it is what it is.
It's different.
This is a hobby,
right?
And I'm not in
different.
And I'm not in the key YouTube demographic. I don't know any year-olds that can look at my content, and even if they could, my content ain't for children.
Look, I don't even know any year-olds I could hire to do social media.
My splash page says explicitly that my content is not for children.
And there it is.
Because I talk about alcohol and strippers.
And there it is, because we're grown.
Today's episode is a little bit heartbreaking, but not really.
Oh no, I gotta pour out a little tea for my homie.
No, not really. We're going to talk about the Silver Hawk, Silver Streak. Yes, the car has 2 names. My 2003 Nissan 350Z Enthusiast Edition.
Ooh.
So let's tell the story. It's September 2015. I am just about to turn 41 years old. The local Nissan dealer has a silver chrome. Okay, Nissan being Nissan has a chrome silver, a liquid aluminum, a silver alloy, a silver stone, and a carbon silver.
Too damn much. That's the marketing people trying to be fancy.
Not all of these shades of silver were available in the same years, but without looking up the VIN number and the paint code, I don't actually know which color silver my car was. I just like to say it was metallic silver. So, metallic silver 350Z parked on the lot. Recently arrived from the wholesaler or whatever. Like, because I drive by this dealership every day and I'm keeping my eye open for a 350 because they don't come that, you know, it's Iowa. They don't keep a lot of sports cars on the lot up there.
Right.
And sure enough, on September 20th, 2015, there's a Z. No, I'm sorry, not the 20th, the 15th. There's a Z on the lot that day when I'm on my way home from work. And in fact, I can tell you, thanks to the miracle of cell phone timestamps on photos,
Yes,
I can tell you
timestamps.
that it was just a little bit after 6 p.m. when I showed up at the dealer, because I had to go home and get my checkbook. When I showed up at the dealer to take a test drive.
Yes.
I test drove the car. It was very loud because it had an aftermarket exhaust, which I later learned was rusted through. It was very stiff because it had aftermarket springs and sat quite low. And on concrete expansion joint roads that you have in the frozen parts of the Midwest, it was quite a lumpy, bumpy ride. But when I got it on some smooth asphalt, it was a lot of fun. So I went back after the test drive and we did the, what do I got to do to get you to walk out with this car song and dance? Can I just
You gotta
say,
go where the money reside, where
I
the money
hate car
reside,
salesmen.
where the money reside,
I
where
hate
the money
car
reside.
dealerships. I cannot stand to buy a car from a dealership.
They are the worst.
My cockles, what is it? What's the saying about your cockles? Whatever. I hate car salesmen. That's terrible.
Hate them. No, it's real.
That's terrible.
They're whack.
Anyway, so we had to go in and do the song and dance. Well, let me talk to my sales manager, blah, 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 with the number on the piece of paper, and that number's too high, and that number's too low, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But long story short, I walk out with the car that night because I was going to walk out with that car. I get home.
Even without them sending in the reinforcement salespeople.
Right. Ugh. Now I get home, and now I got a 350Z, Ford Expedition, and a 1989 300ZX, or Z31 as Nissan heads call them. So I'm like, okay, I don't need two Zs. Got to get rid of the Z31, which I did. And, we went over that in the White Whale episode. So now I've got the silver car. And once again, my life, because I had decided to start grad school, in 15, I was in my second year. So yeah, I was just starting my second year of grad school, settling in. I bought this car, and doggone it if I don't go and get a new job.
Yes.
I'm moving back to North Carolina at Christmas.
Wah, wah.
Now, if I had known that, now, in fairness, I did not apply for the job until October. I did not interview for the job until November. I did not know that I was getting the job until Thanksgiving. But long story short, you're going home, or not home, you're going back to North Carolina at Christmas and you're never coming back to Iowa. Or that's not entirely true.
Forever, ever, forever, ever.
It was an intercompany transfer. So my payroll rolled over on December 1st. And the word was you are to report to your new working location January 4th. Now, as it so happens, it's County, Iowa, and County, North Carolina are not close to one another.
No, there's a little bit of distance in between. Just a little bit.
And there's also some mountains in between.
Yep.
So now here's my dilemma. Drive over the mountains in a rusty, beat up 15-year-old Ford Expedition, or drive over the mountains in a less rusty, not nearly beat up, zippy sports coupe.
Neither sound like good options.
And hope and pray that there's no snow.
Ugh.
So on the 23rd of December, I pack up the 350Z, and we're leaving out the part about me prepping the home and signing the contracts to list my house starting on January 1st. But I pack up the 350 as much as I can get in it, which isn't much, and I start my 2-day trek. I leave Iowa on the 22nd of December. There's no snow. It's cold, but there's no snow. And it's not going to rain that day, so there won't be any freezing rain. So I say, okay, if I can get as far south as Indianapolis, I should be okay.
Right.
And that's like a 9-hour drive. So I got to Indianapolis, got into a hotel and situated. The next morning I got up and I got through Kentucky and West Virginia and over the mountains. And as I was coming down off the mountain, well, it rained all the way through the mountains, really. But then as I was coming down, and you've driven that route when you're coming down out of Virginia, down Interstate 77 into North Carolina.
Through those mountains.
And you go through those mountains, and then you just start driving downhill, like literally, like you're going down an entry ramp, and you just keep going down and down and down
and down.
The further down the mountain I got, the heavier the rain got. I got the Winston-Salem, it's flying sideways. I got the Greensboro, the raindrops are bigger than bumblebees.
Ugh.
And I'm not going to directly. I'm going to where my parents live, which is a different county in North Carolina, but it's further south and towards the coast. And the closer I get to home, the worse the rain gets, because where I'm from in southeastern North Carolina, rain at Christmas is just a way of life. It's winter basically means rain. But I get
it's your equivalent of snow.
Yes. If we get snow, we get it in late January or early February. But December is not generally cold enough for snow, but we get plenty of moisture coming off the Gulf, so we will get rain. But I get to North Carolina, and now I'm a one-car guy because I leave the expedition in Iowa and donate it to a charity. And the house sells the first week. Like, the house was on the market 3 days.
Nice.
Yeah, so the house sells, and I'm squeezed into a little bitty apartment in North Carolina with my 350Z. And then we get our typical frozen precipitation in North Carolina, freezing rain. I remember I spent a day, I didn't go to work because my apartment complex was at the bottom of a hill, so there was no way I was going to work that day. But I spent a couple of hours chipping an inch of sheet ice off of my car.
Too much.
Later that summer, I drove it through a hailstorm, including underneath a flooded train trestle. Or I parked under the train trestle to get out of the hail and realized that I was now in a flash flood situation. So I had to get out of the train trestle and back into the hail. And it did have dents from the hail. I never got them fixed. They were just part of the patina of the car.
Well,
not bad though. It was only a few. There was one chip in the windshield, and if you look the car over really, really close, you can see a couple dings from the hail.
Yikes!
Because it was not quite golf ball size. But me and that car had fun because, again, it was a 350Z. So the first year I had to get a new clutch because the clutch started slipping. And then the second year, so that was January of 16, I got a clutch.
Ooh.
January of 17, I got a new exhaust system. A nice stainless steel HKS exhaust. It was pretty and it sounded wonderful. And I drove it, but it was a street car. It was a commuter car. I'm still in grad school, so I'm not racing.
Right.
And I'm just driving it as my daily driver. And eventually I add the Camry to the fleet, but I'm still driving the Z, 2 days a week or whatever. Just enough to keep the fluid circulated and keep it, happy. And then the summer I finished school in late summer of 19, finished grad school. And I'm like, oh yeah, 2020 is going to be my year. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna be up and down North Carolina autocrossing. I'm gonna shred some tires. I'm gonna go to the drag strip. I'm gonna do the whole thing like in the old days.
You got ready,
man. When did I find out about COVID? My warning, you better get ready. This is gonna be bad warning about COVID happened about the middle of February. Obviously, the plague that is COVID-19 descended upon the United States, and the first autocross that I registered for, which was supposed to be in April, was canceled. And they did not have another one, and I found this out later. The problem the club was having is because of the restrictions that the governor of North Carolina put in place, even on outdoor gatherings, you have to have a certain number of entries. Well, when you have an autocross, you're renting a parking lot or a location for the day, right? So that costs a finite amount of money. But because outdoor gatherings were limited to a certain number of people, the price per person to rent the facility, because that's a shared cost that's part of the entry fee. they realized that the officers that ran the club realized this is going to cost too much to race at this site on a per person basis. It'll cost too much to race at that site on a per person basis. So we only had one place that was available to us, which was our retired runway out in Danville, Virginia. So that's where we had the autocross during the summer. The thing about that is there's two clubs that share that facility in two different parts of North Carolina. So you have to be nice and say, well, okay, we want to use it this month and you can use it next month and we'll come back in October, you know, like
right,
that.
Share.
Right. So what would have normally been an 6-7 autocross schedule turned into, I think they ended up doing 2 autocrosses, non-points, and maybe 2 rally crosses or something.
Oh, okay.
So I was fortunate to get in on the September event. So I did actually take the 350 out and run it through its paces on the cones on the defunct runway out there in Danville, Virginia. And there's lots of footage of that, although that footage is from the car's point of view. So there's no footage. I couldn't take anybody with me, so there was no footage of the car from the outside. All the footage is from the GoPros. But I have fun, and it was nice to get that car out and stretch its legs and really see what it can do. And the deal with the 350 is that it's kind of heavy. Now, it's heavy, let's just say that. But with 270 something horsepower, it's got some pickup. It's not a Corvette, it's not a Ferrari, but it's got a little zip. And to go out there and push it to its limits, even on the crappy tires that I was on, was a lot of fun. And that's something that I'll miss because, spoiler alert, July 2020, I agreed to leave my employer, and I was paid for that,
transition.
They offered voluntary separation because my company doesn't really lay people off. Well, they lay off wage people, but salaried personnel are offered the opportunity to leave with compensation. And for the first time in 15 years, I was actually eligible for a voluntary separation, and I jumped all over it because with my new degree and some other things going on with my life, it was a good time to leave, especially because taking the voluntary separation erased the potential debt that I had incurred on my graduate degree, because the company paid for that degree. So by taking the voluntary separation, it negated my repayment agreement, i.e. if you leave the company within 3 years of graduation, you owe us all that tuition money back.
And nobody wants to be stuck with that.
Nope. So people who don't have jobs don't get to keep fancy sports cars. So I sold the 350Z in late October. And I won't say there was a lot of emotion to it because I don't get emotionally attached to cars in that way. I consider them to be transient things. I'm 46 years old, and at this point in my life, I've owned 11 or 12 different automobiles. So I don't really get attached to them in that way. And I will, as soon as I get another job and start working again, I will own another 350Z or 370Z or something of that ilk because I'm that dude. But I did keep the Stinger. The 240 SX is safely tucked away in a storage unit. But sadly, the Silver Streak, Silver Hawk had to go. And okay, the two names. The car is silver, so the first inclination was to call it the Silver Streak. But then I'm of that age where Silver Hawks was a cartoon that I watched during when I was not quite a tween. I think I was about 12 when Silver Hawks was on TV.
I do not know that cartoon.
Cyborg crime fighters who were human beings but had silver metallic, well, not all of them were silver, but metallic silver cyborg bodies that were bird-like, where they had wings that will pop out from their arms. There'll be a picture on the video, but just your classic "we got toys to sell" kind of cartoon from the late '80s. And also, a friend of mine in college nickname was Silverhawk, so it kind of
all works out.
So the car had two nicknames. It was the Silver Streak and the Silverhawk, but whatever. As cars go, I thought it was pretty good. Now, the 350Z, the early generation 350s, had an issue with front tire wear because of their suspension geometry. And near as I can tell, my car did not have the correction. It was an aftermarket correction that you could do. What the factory did was the factory was offering, I think they were offering free alignments and a new set of tires or new brake pads or whatever. But because I didn't drive the car that much, I mean, let me see what the numbers are here. So the day I bought it on the lot, September 15th, 2015, it had 109,221 miles on it. The day I sold it, October 26, 2020, it had 129,571. So 20,000 miles,
roughly
5 years. So as you can see, I didn't drive it a whole lot. In fact, well, those tires were used, but I only put one set of tires on it, and I put those tires on it in 2018. So, well, no, those tires might have gone on in 17. One year I went in for inspection. Oh, it was the same year I did the exhaust system. So that was it was. I went for inspection, and they're like, you got a hole in your exhaust, and your tires are bald. It's like, okay. So the exhaust system was literally laying on the floor of my garage. I said, put some tires on it. I got the exhaust system at home. I'll be back in 20 days because, in North Carolina, you get 30 days to correct any issues, and you'll pass.
Right.
So I went to my mechanic. I had a mechanic. He was a Nissan guy, specialist, and so I took it to the Nissan specialist, had him put the exhaust system on it, and took it back and got my certification on my inspection. And so one set of tires, and I drove on those for almost 3 years. Anyway, good car, had some flaws. Most of those flaws were from the prior owner. For instance, he had put in a subwoofer behind the driver's seat, and when he sold the car, he took the subwoofer out, which left a hole in the carpet where the subwoofer had been. The car was sprung too stiffly because he put the cute aftermarket springs on it instead of the functional aftermarket springs. And what I mean is, my racetrack prepped 240 is only lowered 1.5 inches from its stock ride height. This 350Z was dropped like 2.5 inches, like to the point where the tires would rub on the fender liner if you turned the front wheel all the way to either side. That was stupid, and also exacerbates the suspension issue that was already inherent to the 2003 350Z, which is why my front tires were bald, because they were feathering, because that was a natural inclination of the car already, and then you lowered the car too low, which made things worse.
Right.
Also, it had a tendency to porpoise. You would get that front rear bouncing thing going on concrete interstates that had expansion joints like you have out west. That wasn't a problem here in North Carolina, where the interstates are mostly asphalt. So on smooth roads, it ran great and it felt good. But on bumpy roads, on potholes, on speed bumps, on steep driveway entrances, it was just a pain in the butt. It's like you never want a car to be that low.
No, that sounds painful.
But that is not functional. You rode with me when we went to your friend's house, and I rubbed on the speed bump.
Yeah.
Like the actual transmission tunnel hit the speed bump.
Yeah.
That's when your car's too low.
Way too low.
What else? It was
loud. It hurts.
It was loud. I drove here from Iowa at 81 decibels average because I had a sound meter on my phone. I had a sound meter app on my phone, and I laid that in the passenger seat and figured out that at 75 miles an hour, that thing had an 81 decibel interior sound level, which is 85 is the point where you start to have hearing damage over like an 8-hour period. So if you can
Oh,
imagine driving
damn.
9 hours in a car that was that loud,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it was. I had a headache when I got home. But the new
Ooh.
exhaust system fixed that because the new exhaust system was around 72, 73 at full throttle, which it's only 10 points, but decibel scale's logarithmic, so significantly less noise. What else happened? I never had the problem. I've heard people that had problem with the variable intake, variable valve timing, and I know what that is. Uh, the servos for these variable, these oil pressure variable timing gizmos, because we used to deal with this at work with variable geometry turbochargers. When you're using engine oil pressure and engine oil to move those servos, that oil has to be clean. If the oil gets dirty, little particles of, let's face it, carbon and metal get jammed down in those fine orifices in those servos and gum them up, and then they don't work properly. Fortunately, I never had issues with my cam phasers. I never had issues with oil leaks. He had an aftermarket air intake. It did break off once, which caused the car to stall at every stoplight.
Ooh.
Because it would not idle properly with that air intake broke off. So I'd get to stoplight and it would be idling and it would just quit. So then I figured out that I had to keep revving it at stoplights. So then people thought I wanted to race them. But when I got home from work that day, I saw what the problem was, and I was able to go to AutoZone and buy a new mount for the air filter and fix that. But it was just like, I got to the light and put the clutch in and it just died. I was like, wait, I know I put the clutch in. What in the world?
That's how I knew my little Festiva was dying. I would get to stoplights and it would just cut off. Oh, and it was so embarrassing. I used to take the long way around campus because I did not want to cut through and
that's especially embarrassing when you're sitting there in a little lowered sports car with that was the other issue with the 350 aftermarket spoiler, that not only was it not installed properly, but it sloped the wrong direction because it wasn't designed to fit on a 350Z, which has a downward sloping rear hatch. So the stupid spoiler leaked anytime it rained. So I'd either have to keep the car indoors, or I had to be very careful about rain when it was outdoors. Because if the catch was, if the car was pointed nose down, it was okay. If it was pointed nose up, water would get up under the spoiler mounts and collect in the trunk. So I had to be careful about that. But again, that's something a prior owner had done. So the car inherently, as Nissan built it, was typical Nissan: sturdy, reliable, reasonably good performer. And 350Z's got looks only a mother could love, but let's say it looks purposeful. It's low and wide and squat. I told somebody it looks like a linebacker.
Yikes.
As opposed to, some other generations of Z car could be called authentically sexy. The 350 was not a car you could call sexy. It looked like it was designed by a German. It was designed to be functional first and pretty second. But I loved the car. I will probably have another one. Like I said, as soon as possible, once I get it working again, I will either have another 350, a later generation 350, where the suspension issues were corrected, or I will get a 370Z, and then I will hot ride it within an inch of its life. Oh, there was one third thing wrong with this car. A dummy prior owner, instead of buying a jumper harness to install his aftermarket CD player, this fool cut into the factory wiring harness. Which I found out when I got ready to install a Bluetooth capable MP3 head unit where I could put in my thumb drive and have 1,000 songs, like we do nowadays. And also I could Bluetooth my phone to it and have a microphone on the visor so I could talk hands-free. as is
Right.
required in the state of North Carolina.
Right.
I got half the dashboard out and discovered that this fool had hacked into the factory wiring harness to install his little cheap Pioneer stereo. That pissed me off.
That's why
I do not believe in that.
not at all.
You buy, because I mean, you can get the stupid jumper harness from Crutchfield for like $15. Sometimes it's free if you buy the stereo from them.
Right.
They throw in the jumper harness and the instructions for free. You're like, come on, man. That's some typical Iowa, I don't really love my car nonsense, because this fool, the car had some rust under it, which means he was driving it in the winter.
Right.
Put
Right.
the car in the garage. Buy you a beater to drive in the wintertime.
Right. Get you a winter beater car, because it's winter 10 months of the year out there.
Exactly. That's what any sane person does. That's why I had a rusty Caprice station wagon. That's why I had a rusty Ford Expedition, because when October came, the sports car went in the garage and it didn't come back out till May. And had I known in September of 2015 that I would be back in North Carolina in December of 2015, I would have waited till I got here to buy
something. Well, that was at least
yes, buy one that had never been exposed to salt.
buy one that was like native to the land and had not been through all that trauma.
Exactly. Which is why I left my rusty Midwestern Expedition up there in the rusty Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no point in bringing that truck back here and watching it disintegrate.
Nope.
Anywho, that's the story of the Silver Streak Silver Hawk, my beloved 350Z that I will miss and replace. You know, like I said, cars are commodities to me, except for that first one. The Stinger has a place in my heart because we've been through a lot together. But all the others, they come in the fleet, they go out in the fleet. So there will be another ZMI fleet someday, probably in the next year and a half. But for now, that's the story of my beloved Silver Streak Silver Hawk. As always, thank you for participating in this glorified hobby slash journal that we're doing that nobody watches. But I have 13 subscribers. I'm up to 13, so
Hey,
somebody's
every
watching.
little bit counts.
But we continue on, and I've made some changes to the opening music and the soundtrack, as it were, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, as we go, there'll be adjustments, and we'll continue to get this product to be better. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon with new content. Thanks.